For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson, whose birthday is today, joins us now from London. Happy birthday, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. That's lovely of you. Nice to be with you this morning.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Right, let's go to business. That's very nice of you. Thank you. Much appreciated. Asia markets. Now, what they're actually looking at, they're very mixed this morning. I know that I always say that Asian markets are mixed. And I don't. The reason being that because it's sort of getting to the end of the banks' reporting season in the United States, the results of those banks are fairly mixed, as are the big corporates like Johnson & Johnson that have been reporting. It's not so much that's what worrying investors very slightly this morning is the fact that none of these people are actually giving specific forecasts for the coming year. So that's tending to upset. And I mean, I can go through the markets with you. The Shanghai Composite's down about 0.5%. Hong Kong finished down about 0.25% down. The Nikkei rising about 0.1%. So you can see not a lot of movement at all. This is basically what's worrying people. They're actually not really getting any kind of forward look, or investors aren't, into where 2023 is heading with these companies. I brought you the story yesterday about a global rice shortage. This morning, it's the turn of sugar. Similar kind of things. Prices at an 11-year high, not necessarily because of Ukraine, but just because of bad weather. And of course, that means an increase in what the Americans would call candy prices, or we would call sweets. I don't know what you call them, presumably the same sweets. Personally, I don't think it's a bad thing because obviously it protects children's teeth. But at the same time, that's what you're seeing these increase in prices in. Not so much of a staple as rice clearly is. Apple. Now, I did bring you the news yesterday that Apple was opening stores, a retail store in Mumbai the day before yesterday. Today, it's the turn of Delhi, and they've got Apple's got about 5% of the India market right now. But what they are doing is they think that there is an appetite for their higher end phones than the one that Indian residents use already. But what they're also saying is that there isn't the manufacturing infrastructure in India right now, so they will be dependent on China for quite some considerable years to come. As far as the United States is concerned, we had the Beige Book yesterday. Now, this is a monthly view of industrial trends, business optimism, and the rest of it. What they're not getting, again, is any clear message from anybody, either corporate or from the Fed, about where interest rates are going, what the forecast for 2023 is going to be. Nevertheless, there is a fair amount of optimism around at the moment, and three significant Fed members are going to speak today. I'll bring you the results of those tomorrow, what they actually say. But the market at the moment looks, as it's quoted, fairly benign in their reaction to what's happening right now. Tesla saw its earnings drop 20%, share price down 4% at the end of the day. However, investors bought the news that one of the reasons for this is that the fact that they are expanding their company, they're also bringing prices down. Margins are falling very, very much, but shareholders more or less bought that story. IBM, Big Blue, do you remember that one? It's still going. It's still a staple of many people's pension funds in the United States and certainly here. The sales of mainframes are actually falling, but you'd sort of expect that. But what's actually growing for them is software and also consulting, and the fact that the shares are up around about 4%. Prediction of growth between 3 and 5%. Again, nothing very, very concrete from them in terms of detail, but between 3 and 5% growth is enough to keep investors happy. And just continuing with the United States, Meta. The Facebook owner, Zuckerberg, is still moving through. There's a total of 21,000 jobs to go there. The latest lot come from things like finance, legal, and HR, human resources. And this is the sort of standard way in which companies tend to slim down. No sense of alarm there, but shareholders actually quite like the fact that there'll be fewer wage costs and therefore the company will be more profitable. I know it's a very cold-blooded way of looking at things, but there we are. The UK now, inflation stubborn, brought you the figures yesterday, 10.1% down from 10.4% the previous month in February, 10.1% for March. But the feeling is amongst analysts that inflation will fall quite rapidly in 2023. I guarantee you what will happen. Politicians will take credit for this, as they always do. It's nothing to do with them whatsoever. It's to do with energy prices falling. And it may be that the December level is about 3.7%. That's December 2023. Again, the politicians will take an enormous amount of credit for this, and it's part of Sunak and Jeremy Hunt's targets to actually hit a low inflation rate by the end of the year. But the truth is, it won't happen. It would happen in any case. It's prices falling out of the index, and energy and fuel will be energy and gas will be one of those things which actually falls down. Pension funds in the United Kingdom now, pensions. There's not the sort of consolidation that you see in Canada and Australia. It's still quite fragmented. This is big money. This is people like the people who work for the National Health Service, people who work for universities and so on, big public pension funds. And Jeremy Hunt, in a wish to revive the UK economy, is seemingly wanting to push those into riskier investments. They're saying, no thanks, we'll stay safe right now. So that's a tussle which are going to be. What he wants to do is to be able to say in his autumn statement, I've upped the growth levels of the UK. Pension funds are reacting against that. And also, another part of the London market that's being objected against, this is by Bank of America against the Lloyd's insurance market. Now, if you remember, I brought to you the news that Lloyd's insurance market was very wary. They're not doing this at the moment. This is all part of a consultation paper. But what they're doing is they don't want to get involved in compensating people for national cybercrime attacks. In other words, if a whole, for example, I don't need to name names, but obviously, clearly, Russia is one of them, isn't it? And the Wagner Group and all the rest of them, if they actually feel as though, and they're targeting British companies, Lloyd's themselves are sort of writing into their constitution that they don't necessarily want to feel responsible for that. Again, that's a debate which will continue. Oil is slightly down on a stronger dollar, and gold is felt that it still is worth its place in the sun. You may get to around about $20-50 an ounce. But again, this is all about where risk is going. And I just want to add a slight footnote to this is breaking news here that BP investors, this is energy company, obviously BP, are upset about the company's apparent U-turn on its greening pledges. It feels as though the company is slowing down in its move to transition by 2030 to bring more of its fossil fuels out of the equation and more renewables into the equation. It feels as though, and these are really big funds. This is University Superannuation Scheme, National Employment Savings Trust, Brunel Pension Partnership, which includes lots of local authorities, and other big pension funds may join in. So there's a bit of a shareholder revolt happening as far as BP is concerned. That is the global view this morning.
Michael Wilson, congratulations once again on your birthday.
Thank you.
There are so many issues I want to talk about from yesterday, in fact. But I think the main business today is the business of Michael Wilson. Your birthday. You are the longest serving business editor on television. You've been there since 1989, since the beginning of Sky News. You've been on every major channel, Reuters, ITV, Al Jazeera. You've been everywhere. You've written for the British Journalism Review. You've done so much. And now you are here on Arise News. So what is the secret of the Michael Wilson business, who in fact distinguished himself so well in journalism that he became a free man of London? I think that's about since 2015 or thereabouts. You should tell us, the younger generation, what the secret is. That's the number one question. And to add to it, that there are implications as we always say here, when you celebrate your birthday, there are implications. You can sell burger and ice cream from London. We are ready here. We will. Everybody is excited in the studio. Say we want to see Michael Wilson organize implications. But happy birthday to you. The other issue is a quick comment on the inflation, the core inflation crisis that Britain now faces. Despite Jeremy Hunt saying that, look, he's doing well, and Rishi Sunak saying he's doing Business Connect on Monday. Now, headline inflation may have gone down, but core inflation has gone up, and this will have implications for cost of living crisis in Britain. So, what would the Bank of England do now that it is under additional pressure?
As I was saying earlier on, and thank you for all your good wishes, what I was saying earlier on is that I don't think politicians will try to take a great deal of credit for what happens in this country towards the end of the year as far as inflation is concerned. Actually, the majority of economists polled, which I've seen this morning, think that inflation will come down. But what they do say is it's nothing to do with, you can more or less let it go. It doesn't need any political control. It's not within the remit either of the Bank of England or indeed politicians to actually bring inflation down. It will fall naturally because the level of price rises, simply as the equation of inflation actually works, is falling out. So therefore it will naturally, arithmetically, fall by the end of the year. I'm pretty sure that the Bank of England will continue its so-called fight on inflation. It will keep a firm hand on interest rates. But as soon as there's a slight waiver, and I suspect the first waiver will come from the United States, from the Fed, which will say, do you know what? We're going to join the rest of or rather three of the main central banks, which I told you about again earlier in the week, which are they feel as though, it's feeling one's way forward with a white stick in lots of ways, but they feel as though they feel as though the inflation cycle is gradually falling, and therefore the interest rate cycle of raises is actually falling. And I think this will be a difficult task for the Bank of England, but this is what they're paid to do. And isn't it interesting that the Australian Central Bank this morning just announced, I just see it now, that they are going to have their own monetary policy committee, which is supposed to be independent, because they feel as though the Australian Central Bank, whatever it's been doing, has been too much controlled by politicians. Anyway, long and the short of it is, I don't think it's anything to do with politicians. It's just the way the world is.
All right, well, Michael, I just wanted you didn't answer Dr. Abbas's first question in terms of the secret to your longevity in the business of business. But let me, I hope you'd answer that, because it's quite, it will be rich to listen to some of the lessons you've learned in the course of a career. But let me ask about, when you talk about the sugar high, okay, go on, please, go ahead.
The thing is that the subject that I'm lucky enough to cover always brings a new surprise every day. You think you've seen it all, and then something else happens, and so on. It's a privilege to be able to report globally, particularly for an organisation like Arise, and talk to you people first thing in the morning as well, which I thoroughly enjoy. I love your comments. I love when you come back to me about various things that I've done, and I think that to and fro keeps you alive. I do other things in life as well to keep going, but I think that if your brain is stimulated, that's half the thing. And certainly, working for Arise keeps the brain stimulated, and I enjoy speaking to you and doing my best to sort of marshal the global comments every morning. There's no secret to it. That's all it is. And whenever I grumble about getting up early in the morning, my wife always says to me, so what else would you be doing? You're very lucky to be, and this is what my friends say. They all say, I'm very lucky at my kind of age to be continuing to broadcast on a subject which I enjoy doing. So there's no secret. It's about enjoying what you do.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. And it's always a delight to have you come on air in the morning with us. All right, so let me go to my question. When you talked about the rise in sugar and, obviously the effect on sweets and all that, there's an article around Share Action and Investor Group, which is highlighting or perhaps flagging off the high content of unhealthy food that the biggest food company in the world, Nestle, is churning out. And what they're asking for is that Nestle cuts down by 40% on healthy food that they that they provide, that they produce. So for instance, on a Kit Kat, some of their cereal brands, that it contains over 40% of sugar, salt, and fat. So it's really high and very unhealthy for people. What's your take on? Do you think Nestle will hit to this score?
They should. The problem is that we haven't the time to discuss, presumably, the full story of sugar, which is absolutely fascinating. I mean, it's a recent. How long have we had sugar? 200 or 300 years, probably. How did things get sweeter before that? Was it honey? Probably was. It's a real. I mean, I think personally that what a lot of these companies are trying to get rid of sugar as quickly as possible and keep people hooked on it, which keeps people wanting chocolate and keeps people wanting sweets and so on. And it's clearly not good for you. And there are other ways of sweetening things which I think people ought to consider. But I mean, that's a very personal thing. If I were Nestle, I'd be grasping this opportunity. I'd be listening to the shareholders. I'd be listening to the customers and saying, this is what we're going to do, and put forward a much more healthy conglomerate of tastes and products, because they're a very big company. That's what I'd be doing personally. I'd be listening to the shareholders, and I'd be listening to the consumers and the medical profession around the world. Certainly, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Michael Wilson. Now for business updates across the African continent, Rotus Odiri is here. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Doctor.
Yesterday.
Yes, you did. I missed you all as well. Good morning, Kay. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning to all our viewers. And happy birthday to Michael Wilson. It's a pleasure working with him. As Doctor, you said, I emulate him. I was watching a video from him in 2013 when he was hosting the Global Business Report. It was awesome. So I hope to last in the business as long as he has. Happy birthday.
Rotus, remind him
about implications. Yes, I will remind him.
Organize the pepper soup and the jollof rice.
I will do that.
I
will do that. I will do that. Happy birthday, Michael. And so, yes, we let's start with Access Bank. Access Holdings PLC Corporation releasing their full year 2022 earnings. And they did well, if not that their profit after tax was hit by the issues in Ghana. So basically what's been happening, and we'll go through the numbers in 1 second, but just for our viewers, Ghana, of course, restructured its debt and pretty much, wasn't able to make its payments because of its fiscal issues. And so Access Bank took 103 billion naira hit on their Ghana holdings. That's an impairment, which is basically a loss on what you've held. If we go back to their earnings, though, it still didn't, it impacted them, but just to go back, if you look at their total assets, basically 15 trillion naira, to almost a 28% growth. Their gross earnings, I need to go back and check this. I think Access Holdings is the first financial services company in Nigeria to cross 1 trillion naira in gross earnings. So that grew by 42%, massive growth. Your net interest income, which is the difference between what you pay out to depositors and what you earn on loans, 359 billion, almost 20% growth there. And then unfortunately, I mean, look, if your profit after tax is 152 billion and you took a hit of 100 billion on your Ghana holding, surely it's going to impact you. So we saw profit before tax fall by 5%. We saw profit after tax fall by 4.47%. But still very impressive results despite that Ghana issue. If we rifle through the other banks, so we go ahead, you see again, they call it was 103 billion, but Zenith Bank took 123 billion naira hit. Also, Zenith had good results as well, but unfortunately they were hit as well. I think next was GTCO. They also had good earnings, although they were down, but they took a 35 billion naira hit on their Ghana holdings. Who was next? I think UBA took 17 billion. Then EcoBank, they report their results in dollars. There was a $170 million hit. So all in all, you saw basically on their domestic debt, all these banks have investments in government securities. And so Ghana was essentially saying, look, you're going to have to swap out this debt and take a loss on your holdings. And so that's what we've seen with a number of the banks, especially for the big tier one banks. Speaking of debt, the Debt Management Office, the DMO, has put out a notice yesterday, rebuttal of false publications by some media houses titled Nigeria Defaults on Debt Repayment to China. I don't know which media houses reported this. We certainly didn't report this, but they felt the need to put this notice out saying that the attention of the Debt Management Office has been drawn to publications by some media houses. I had publication might suggest maybe the papers or something, that they're defaulting on their China debt. Don't know where this news came from, but Nigeria has been servicing her debt. However, Why did this pop up all of a sudden? Well, the World Bank spring meetings, the World Bank put out a notice saying that Nigeria's debt service as a percentage of revenue was 96% in 2022. The Federal Ministry for Finance will differ because their numbers show that through January to November, debt service was 80.6. But hey, whether it's 96 or 80.6, you're still paying out either 80 naira for every 100 naira you earn or 96 naira every 100 naira you earn. Now, I've heard all sorts of things. There are some mischievous people who decided to put that out saying we're defaulting on China loans. As you know, China itself has engaged in some, false fake news trying to destabilize countries. I heard maybe they put that news out to make Nigeria know that, hey, listen, you need to pay your loans and so on and so forth. Who knows? But the point is, Nigeria is servicing her debts. Nigeria is in no emergency with respect to defaulting on any loans. However, those numbers speak for themselves. Either it's 96% debt service to revenue or 80%, they are very, very high. And this puts a lot of pressure on the next administration to try to get revenues going to pay off debt. First of all, is removing subsidies. Finally, since we've been talking about Ghana so much, Ghana released their GDP figures for the fourth quarter. And they beat estimates. It was 3.7% year-on-year growth for the fourth quarter. If we quickly go through this, it was 7% in 2021. Oil, it was a non-oil growth story. Oil growth was this is full year GDP. So full year GDP was 3.7%. Q4 oil growth, 3.7, 5.6%. Then non-oil growth was higher, 4.3%. So it was a non-oil growth story. If you take a look at the sectors that did well, look at this. Ghana's ICT, 20%. Public administration, defense, social security, 15%. Mining, 13.4%. They don't call Ghana the Gold Coast for nothing. Look at education. Education, I've got cousins that have graduated from Ghanaian universities, 12.7% growth in education. Health and social work, 10.5. And I like what Ghana does. In the Ghana Statistical Service, they like to compare. So whether they do well or do badly, they say, how are we doing next to other nations? This is Q4. Mauritius at the top, beautiful country. I'm yet to visit. I have to go there. Lovely. All their GDP comes from tourism. Rwanda, I went there last year. They're doing very well as well, 7%. Botswana, 5.9. There's Ghana. And then, of course, Nigeria. So from jollof rice to the Super Eagles and the Black Stars to everything, we're always comparing ourselves. So Ghana did better than Nigeria, 3 points. Then you have Namibia, Tunisia. Look at South Africa at the bottom. Then you go to next up as far as full year. Their 2022 full year growth, 3.1%. So that was neck and neck with Nigeria. It was 5.1 in the previous year. Again, they put their full year growth comparing themselves to the rest of everyone else. So Mauritius again, Rwanda 8%, Botswana 5.8, Namibia, Ghana 3.1, Nigeria there 3.1, Tunisia and South Africa. That's our updates from the African continent. It's all about Ghana and how they're impacting everybody.
Well, okay, let me start with Ghana. I'm fascinated. When you said the education contribution to GDP was...
growth. That's their growth
rate.
Yeah.
12.3%. I thought Nigeria accounts for 10% of that growth rate. And isn't it quite a shame because it's a West African country. We have the same opportunities, if not more.
Yeah.
People talk about the glory days of our education system, especially in terms of our tertiary education, where we had people from around the world come in to experience the best of education at tertiary institutions. Unfortunately, this has been marred by strikes.
Lack of money.
Strikes.
Yeah.
It's not just even money, it's even political will to develop that sector. And we see the potential of different industries in terms of their growth rates per annum. We keep talking about taking away dependency from oil, but people, if this must happen, you must be willing to invest in these other sectors.
You have to.
We talk about mining. We've had this conversation a number of times on this show in terms of the opportunities for mining in Nigeria and how the illegalities rob us of the income from that sector.
Indeed. Nigeria's mining sector is growing in single digits, and smuggling and everything has been, impacting the sector. So it's pretty sad.
Well, it looks like we don't have enough time, and yesterday we really did miss you here. But what I'll quickly mention is the shortage of rice, shortage of sugar, and that you and I talk about the numbers regularly, and I'm looking at the numbers now and I'm thinking, what is wrong if the rest of the world is struggling? Ebonyi State and all the other parts of the country where we are producing rice, why can't we scale and just increase? Same thing with sugar. Help me understand, what is it that makes it so difficult for us to scale and then be able to take care of the market?
We had the CEO of Dangote Sugar on the Global Business Report. Dangote Sugar has invested over 100 billion naira in backward integration for sugar. We have a Nigeria Sugar Master Plan that has not gotten us anywhere. We have not improved. Why? Because there continues to be smuggling. There continues to be issues as far as they still have to import sugar into the nation, right? As far as domestic infrastructure, look, to produce anything, sugar, this mobile phone, you need power, right? You need to have the basic items on ground to move things. You are still moving everything by road. Look, it is what it is.
Okay.
Right?
See, this is how it is. This is not what I wanted to comment on, but I may just go in that direction.
No.
But let me start with sugar. There is a sugar crisis in the world. It's a global crisis, in part because of weather conditions in those countries that produce sugar cane. Thailand, China, India, they have severe sugar, production conditions because of the weather. Brazil has its production phase between April and December. Now, the expectation is that would that change the situation a little bit. But the concern with regard to sugar is that even if Brazil rolls out its own production between April this year and December, the price of sugar will still be higher than historical levels. And you'll find the same, the implication of that is that you pay more for chocolate, you pay more for candy, you pay more for milk, all of those products that use, sugar.
Yeah.
Part of the problem also is that sugar cane, with the reduction of OPEC Plus with regard to oil output, now sugar cane is now being used in the producing countries to produce ethanol. And so the amount of sugar that is available, so it's a global problem in that regard. With regard to rice, the question you will ask, there's also a rice deficit in the world. The price of rice has also gone up.
Yes.
Then Nigeria adopted the Anchor Borrowers Program. Nigeria, put rice on the restricted imports list.
Thank you.
So why have we not gained from that? Because there is increase in production in Nigeria, but at the same time, the price of rice has increased.
Indeed.
After all, the CBN showed us pictures of paddy rice, over 1 million bags of paddy rice. Yes, truly there is increase in production, but the cost has gone up because of inflation, because of insecurity,
flooding
in the country, and the supply chain problem. But I wanted to talk about IMF, about China, and Nigeria. We are owing China over $4 billion as of December 2021. So the DMO is now saying, well, we are not reneging on our obligations. We have these low-cost concessional loans from China. We were to pay the principal within 7 years. And then the 2.5% interest rate is to last for 20 years. We're told that we are meeting our obligations. But the truth of the matter is that even China itself is having problems with what is called Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative was designed by the government of Xi Jinping to promote infrastructure development in many parts of the world. But now they are going to have the third forum on that Belt and Road Initiative this year to review it. What they are now doing, they are shifting from infrastructure loans because the debt profile there is in the range of trillions. And you have countries like Zambia that cannot even pay. You have countries like Ghana that cannot even pay. So what they are now looking at in China is what they call emergency rescue loans. And that's why you have seen China in the conversation with regard to Sri Lanka, with regard to Turkey, and with regard to there's one other country.
Argentina?
No, not Argentina, but Sri Lanka, Turkey. I'm very sure of those two examples. So, and they want to review it. But the major question for Nigerians is that should we keep borrowing? World Bank says our debt service to revenue ratio
96%.
No, in fact, last year they said it was 102%. It was at this spring meeting that they now reduced it to 96%.
96,
DMO, Debt Management Office of Nigeria, is saying it's 86%. So who do we believe? And if this loan is going to stretch to 20 years, maybe your children and my grandchildren
will be paying the loan.
will be the ones to bear the cost. That is where we are. And what will the next government do about this huge debt service to revenue ratio? So it's not enough for DMO to come and tell us, hey, we are meeting our obligation. Which obligations are you meeting? At what cost?
Right.
To public health and the survival of the average Nigerian.
Solid.
Excellent
solid.
questions,
Solid.
Thank you very much for that breakdown.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rotus.